Hey guys, today I will be showing you guys what the best case scenario will be for the Democratic Party in the 2022 Senate elections if they're able to regain support in the generic congressional vote and if they are able to get Joe Biden back up into the positives in terms of his approval rating. I think the Democratic Party has a very good chance at still doing well. The election is still a year away. A lot can definitely change. At this point in 2019, before the 2020 election, Donald Trump's chances of winning the election were very high before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So definitely a lot can still change for the Democratic Party. I'll be making a similar video for the GOP as well, but today we'll be taking a look at the best case scenario for the Democratic Party in the 2022 Senate elections. So taking a look at the 2016 map here. So these are the races from 2016. We have the exact same races in 2022. There are no special elections as of now, but I will be taking a look at the solid states first for the Democratic Party. I think we will essentially have the same solid states along the west and east coast. So on the west coast, Washington with Patty Murray, in Oregon, Ron Wyden, and in California, Alex Padilla. I think they will all win with solid margins here. Patty Murray won by 18% in Washington in 2016, Ron Wyden by 23%, and in the state of California, Kamala Harris won by 23% against a fellow Democrat. But in 2022, of course, it will be Alex Padilla that will be running instead of Kamala Harris because, of course, Kamala Harris is the vice president. And in the state of Hawaii, we have Brian Schatz, who won by a whopping 51.3%. So there's no way that this seat is not going to be solid for the Democratic Party. The state of Illinois, solid for them as well, for Tammy Duckworth. So by solid, I do mean margins of over 15 percentage points. In the state of Illinois, Tammy Duckworth barely won by 15% in 2016, winning her first term in Congress. She has definitely made a name for herself since then, and I think that she will be able to, do the same in 2022. The state of New York, Chuck Schumer won by 43%. The Senate Majority Leader, I'm very confident, will also win his re-election there. And then in the state of Vermont, Patrick Leahy will be retiring. This is the first Democratic retirement. The current president pro tempore, one of the longest serving senators in American history. I believe he would be third or fourth at the very end of this term. But Patrick Leahy will not be running for a ninth term in Congress, and he will be leaving the seat open for the Democratic Party, and they are going to win with a solid margin. The state of Vermont voted for him by 28% on the presidential level. The state of Vermont has been voting for the Democratic Party for a very long time. If we do look at the past election results here, it voted for Joe Biden by 35.4%. In 2016, Clinton by 26%, 2012, Obama by 35%, 2008, Obama by 37%. So this state, there is no way that it is going to go for the Republican Party. It's like saying the Democratic Party has a chance of winning in the state of Wyoming, where Trump won by 43%. So in the Senate now, I do think Patrick Leahy, no matter what, it will be a Democrat that will replace him. We have Richard Blumenthal in the state of Connecticut and Chris Van Hollen in Maryland, putting the Democratic Party up at 45 seats. So in Massachusetts in 2016, or Connecticut in 2016, Blumenthal plus 29 points, and in Maryland 25. So we have some pretty strong Democratic incumbents this time around, and I think that in all of these solid states, they will be able to win. So really, they do also hold on to this to the two seats in Georgia and Arizona because of the 2020 special elections in both of these states in which the Democratic Party won. So with the exception of these, Democratic Party has very strong incumbents going into 2022, if they did not win in Georgia and Arizona, because those two seats are going to be very difficult for them to defend. And something else that's interesting about Vermont is that Patrick Leahy, he is the first and only Democratic senator to have ever been elected from the state of Vermont. There has never been a Democrat elected from Vermont, not named Patrick Leahy. Bernie Sanders is technically a registered independent. So we will see the second ever Democrat in the state of Vermont as a member of the U.S. Senate, or we may see another independent, who knows. But it is very interesting that Patrick Leahy is the only Democrat to have ever been elected to the U.S. Senate from the state of Vermont, which, is one of the original 13 states. And now I'm going to fill in the solid states for the GOP, even though this is a best case scenario for the Democratic Party. The GOP still has very strong strongholds in many of these areas in the country. States like Idaho, where Mike Crapo won by 38%, Utah, where Mike Lee won by 41%, North and South Dakota, where John Hoeven and John Thune Saskatchewan. So these states are going to remain positive for the GOP with a solid margin. I mean, North Dakota plus 61.5%. The Democratic candidate only winning 17% of the vote there. So it is going to be very solid for the GOP in many of these states. In Kansas, we have Jerry Moran. Typically, I would not categorize Kansas as a solid Democratic or a solid Republican state in a best case scenario for the Democratic Party. But with these incumbents who do make a difference, the candidates in these races do make a difference. It is a little bit different from the presidential election, where the party does matter a lot more. But in these more localized races for the Senate, the candidates do matter a little bit more. That's why you see Democrats like Joe Manchin win in West Virginia, and governor races where you have two Republican governors in both Vermont and New Hampshire. I'm also going to give the GOP the state of Alabama. I think that even though Richard Shelby is retiring, he's going to be replaced by a Republican, and it's going to be a solid margin for them in all likelihood. South Carolina, Tim Scott, I think that he will be able to win his race with a solid margin, won by 23% last time. He will do a lot better than Lindsey Graham, who won by just 10% against Jamie Harrison in 2020. And finally, I have the state of Alaska. I think Lisa Murkowski is going to carry this. Whether or not it's her or Kelly Tshibaka, I don't think that Al Gross or any other Democrat or independent in the state really has a chance. So this puts the GOP up at 41 seats with their solid seats filled in to the Democratic Party with 45. I'm now going to move on to the likely seats for both of these parties, starting off with the likely states for the GOP. And we have these states of Indiana and Kentucky. These are both seats that the GOP won by likely margins of between 7 and 15% in 2016. I think it'll be around the same in 2022. In 2022, if this will be a best case scenario. We also have the state of Iowa, where Chuck Grassley won by 24.4% 5 years ago from 2021. But I think that for Chuck Grassley, he will do a little bit worse in 2022 because of his age. He will be running for, I believe, an 8th term in the United States Senate. He's also one of the longest serving senators in history. And in the state of Iowa, he does currently lead in the polls by 17 to 18%. I think that in a best case scenario for the Democratic Party, considering that Chuck Grassley has been elected there 7 times already, I do think that the margin may go down a little bit because Chuck Grassley's margins have been decreasing over time in the state of Iowa, even though the state of Iowa has begun, to shift more and more to the right. And so this puts the GOP up at 44, and that is all the likely seats that I have for the Republican Party. For the Democratic Party, I have starting off with the state of Colorado. I think Colorado will definitely be likely in a best case scenario for them. We have Michael Bennet up for re-election, won his second term by 5.7% in 2016, and in 2010 he won his first term by just 1.6%. And you have to keep in mind that in the state of Colorado in 2010, it was a different environment. If you look at the presidential election results from 2008, you saw that Barack Obama won the state by 9%, but in 2004, this state was won by Bush by 4.7%. So, I mean, just 6 years before the election of Michael Bennet in 2010, the state voted for the Republican Party by almost 5% on the presidential level. So the state of Colorado is a lot bluer right now than it had been in the past. But Michael Bennet coming to 2022 in a state that Joe Biden won by 14%, I think that he will be able to win the state by a likely margin. I think that if he faces a strong opponent, it may go down to a lean, but in a best case scenario, definitely it's going to be likely for him. There are no polls. There have been some polls released where he does lead, typically by likely margins, although, it may go down depending on what happens. This one poll against Eli Bremer, where Bennett only leads by 8%. Eli Bremer, of course, being a former Olympic athlete, not too much political experience. So this will put the Democratic Party up at 46. I also have the state of New Hampshire, which I also believe will be likely. This is, of course, because Kristen Sununu has dropped out of the Senate race here. If you do look at the polls between Maggie Hassan, the Democratic incumbent who will be having to defend her seat, and in the possible Republican candidates, Kristen Sununu is the only one that manages to beat Maggie Hassan. Every other Republican loses to Maggie Hassan. You have Donald Boldeau, who is currently, I believe, in second place because we do have a new frontrunner in that race. But it is not going to be Kelly Ayotte either, because she, on the same day as Sununu, announced that she would not be running for Senate. So Maggie Hassan's main two opponents, which is Kristen Sununu, which were Kristen Sununu, who is the current governor, will be running for re-election election as governor in 2022. He will not be running for the Senate, even though it would be a good race for him to run in, considering the political climate. But he does want to remain governor. Kelly Ayotte is the former governor that Maggie Hassan defeated in 2010. She won this seat by 0.14%. Maggie Hassan has been able to win elections. She has a pretty good track record. She won, I believe, 3 terms or 2 terms as governor of the state previously to this. So, with Kelly Ayotte and Chris Sununu, the 2 most popular Republicans in the state, with them out of the race, I think Maggie Hassan can definitely win her race with a likely margin. Maybe even solid like Jean Shaheen in 2020, where Corky Messner really did not stand a chance. Shaheen really faced no strong Republican opponents in a race that otherwise would have been pretty competitive for her, because in 2014, she only won by 3.2%. So 2016, Maggie Hassan barely wins. 2022, I think that it can definitely be a likely margin, depending on who the Republicans choose to run there. And this puts the Democratic Party up at 47. I'm now going to take a look at the lean seats that I have on this map. So these are margins between 2 and 7 percentage points. I'm going to start off here on the West Coast with the state of Nevada. I think the state of Nevada for Catherine Cortez Masto, I think that in a best case scenario, she'll definitely be able to win her re-election. 2016, she defeated Joe Heck by 2.4%. 2022, she's likely to face Mark Brnovich, who I believe is the Secretary of State of the state of Nevada. And so if this will load, Catherine Cortez Masto leads by 4% in the latest poll against Adam Laxalt, who used to be the front runner. We have no polls against Brnovich so far. But for Catherine Cortez Masto, I think that she will be able to hold on to her seat. Even if this was not a best case scenario, I think the margin could be very, very small. But right now, I do favor the Democratic incumbent in this race. She's not too controversial. She was elected, with a respectable margin of 2.4% in 2016. I think that she'll be able to be successful again in the next year's election. And I will also be categorizing the state of Pennsylvania as a lean seat for the Democratic Party. I do think that they will be able to flip this. This would be the first flip for the Democratic Party so far. This is a seat that I think John Fetterman will be able to win. He is currently expected to run against either Jeff Bartos or Sean Parnell, both of these candidates being the frontrunners, but Bartos has been endorsed by Donald Trump, which is a huge advantage that he has. In the latest poll, Fetterman and Parnell actually tie, while Fetterman defeats Bartos by 9%. Bartos, of course, being the frontrunner currently. This is definitely bad news because Bartos is more electable statewide than he is within the Republican Party, where Parnell seems to do a little bit better. So with John Fetterman, the current lieutenant governor of the state, I do think that he'll be able to win it with a lean margin of between 2 and 7%. I think that in a best case scenario, it will not get too much tighter than that. And finally, the state of Georgia. This is the final lean state I have for the Democratic Party, putting them up at 50 seats. So yes, they will retain control of the U.S. Senate in their best case scenario. In the state of Georgia, Raphael Warnock will be running for re-election. He won the 2016 Senate election here, or 2020 Senate election. So 2016, Johnny Isakson wins re-election by 14% in Georgia, a pretty good margin for the now competitive state. 2020, there was a special election because Johnny Isakson, of course, retired as a result of health issues. He was then replaced and appointed with Kelly Loeffler, who was appointed by Governor Brian Kemp. Kelly Loeffler then ran against Raphael Warnock in the special election because that's what you have to do when you're appointed. You have to run in the next Senate midterm election, or, not midterm election, but you have to just run in the next year where there will be a Senate election, so every 2 years, and you will have to win that special election to run until the next time in which your seat is actually supposed to be put up for re-election, which will be 2022. So that's why Raphael Warnock and Mark Kelly are both up for re-election, because they both won special elections in Georgia. So in the state of Georgia here for Raphael Warnock, he won by 2.1%. Kelly Loeffler was definitely a very weak candidate in the midst of a Democratic wave after the 2020 presidential election victory for Joe Biden. But I do think that in 2022, Herschel Walker currently has basically a 90% chance of securing the GOP nomination for this race. He has no political experience. He does have a lot of shady things in his past, and I don't think he will be the best campaigner, which is why I do think that Raphael Warnock, in his best case scenario, will be able to defeat the Republican and win the state of Georgia with a lean margin. And the only two lean states I have on this map for the GOP are the states of Missouri and Florida. I think that both of these races will be more competitive, of course, if the Democratic Party does better, but I really don't think the Democratic Party has a chance at winning any of these two states. Even though the state of Florida is a swing state, I really don't think that the Democratic Party will be able to flip Marco Rubio's seat. Marco Rubio won by 6.6%, I believe was the margin in 2016, 7.7%. Apologize for that, but 7.7% against Patrick Murphy. In 2010, he won his first election by 19.2% against Charlie Crist. So I do think that Marco Rubio will be able to win his re-election in 2020. He does lead Val Demings, the presumptive Democratic nominee, in every single poll released. Of course, by double digits, but I think that margin can go down a little bit because Florida, at the end of the day, will still be, more or less a more competitive race. And finally, in the state of Missouri here, Roy Blunt will not be running for re-election. He won by 2.8% in 2016, which is why they're both Democratic and Republican primaries here. Currently, the Democratic frontrunner is, I believe, Lucas Coons and Scott Sifton, and for the GOP, it is Eric Greitens, who seems to have beat out Eric Schmidt. So Eric Greitens does poll better at around 6 to 7%, so I think in a best case scenario, the Democratic Party will be able to push this margin a little bit. We saw in 2018, Josh Hawley defeat Claire McCaskill by 5.8%. Claire McCaskill, of course, being a third-time incumbent who lost her re-election in 2018. So I think that the Republican Party will, no matter what, hold on to this seat. And this puts them up at 46 seats. And now we have 4 more seats left to categorize here that are going to be tilted for both parties. I'm going to start off with the seat that Mark Kelly currently holds in the state of Arizona. Of course, he was elected in the 2020 special election here. He defeated Martha McSally, who was appointed by Governor Doug Ducey after the death of John McCain, of course, in 2007 or 2018. So, John McCain, who won by 13%, 2020, Mark Kelly flips it and wins it by 2.3%. So I think he will be able to win, but I think that he will face a little bit of a stronger challenge here in the state of Arizona, where he currently does lead by, pretty good margins in all of these polls. He is not behind in any of them, but I think that he'll do relatively well. And I think that it's a good thing that he's up for re-election in 2022, which does, seem to be a little bit more difficult for the Democratic Party, because if this was Kyrsten Sinema, I think that she would almost definitely lose her seat. So Mark Kelly is definitely the more popular out of the 2 Democratic senators from Arizona. And I did mistake myself earlier. Mark Brnovich is the candidate in Arizona. In the state of Nevada, it is Adam Laxalt, so I do apologize for that. Mark Brnovich is the candidate in Arizona, and then Adam Laxalt will most likely be running against Catherine Cortez Masto in the state of Nevada. So you can see the polling between the two right here. And then I will now move up to the Rust Belt here with the state of Wisconsin. I have this as a tilt seat for the Democratic Party as well. This seat currently held by incumbent Ron Johnson, who will be running for a 3rd term. And the only polls released do not show Ron Johnson leading in any of them. And I think that in a best case scenario, of course, is to say that Joe Biden won on the presidential level by 0.63%. Ron Johnson won his re-election in 2016 against Russ Feingold by 3.4%. In 2010, he defeated the Democratic incumbent by 4.8%, of course, being Russ Feingold as well. So Feingold is not going to run again, but I think that whoever the Democratic nominee is here, they will be able to do well against Ron Johnson. And in a best case scenario, I do think that they have, fully the potential to win. Mandela Barnes currently seems to be the front runner for this race, but we'll see as time goes on who wins the Democratic primary here. So this will be another tilt seat for the Democrats. I also have North Carolina. Richard Burr, the incumbent Republican, is retiring in this seat after winning by 5.7% in 2016. And currently the Republican front runner, there are no polls out of the state, but currently the GOP front runner does, to be entirely honest, I'm not sure who the GOP frontrunner is right now for this seat, if I can remember. But for the Democrats, Cherry Beasley is definitely one. She is the frontrunner. Cherry Beasley is the frontrunner, and for the GOP, yes, I do remember, it is Ted Budd. Ted Budd is the frontrunner for the GOP nomination for this seat, and for the Democrats, it is Cherry Beasley who currently does lead. So in the state of North Carolina, I do think that in a best case scenario for Democrats, they will be able to win. And finally, in the state of Ohio, I do have Tim Ryan winning his election here as well. I think that he is definitely the best candidate that the Democrats can put in this race that could be competitive. And in the polls, he's not doing too poorly, considering that it is the state of Ohio. I think that in a good year for the Democratic Party, I think that Tim Ryan can definitely do something here. Even though it's not too likely, I think Tim Ryan will be a good candidate that has a chance at surprising everyone. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. This is the best case scenario for the Democratic Party at 454 for them and 46 for the GOP. I'll be making one for a best case scenario for the GOP as well very soon. So make sure you be on the lookout for that. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Comment down below how well you think Democrats can do in their best case scenario. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.